welcome to our mini lesson on reciprocals and division. This covers a lot of material, so I want to get going pretty quick here. First off, what is a reciprocal? A reciprocal, and that's a little arrow there, means that you flip the number upside down. So if you have 2, it would flip over and become 1 over 2. Okay, if you had 3, it would become 1 over 3. Okay, we're just essentially making fractions out of things. We're flipping them upside down. That's what a reciprocal is. So if you have 2 over 3, for example, when we flipped it around upside down, it would then become 3 over 2. See, so it's just like this cute little guy here, upside down. Okay, that's what a reciprocal is. We're essentially flipping a fraction over. Okay, so the next part is that there's rules. And here are the rules, the basic rules to determine which sign you have. If there's an even number of negative numbers, the answer will be positive. Like we said last time, 2 negatives make a positive. Well, that's the same for all of those. If there's 4 negatives, it makes a positive. If there's 6 negatives, it makes a positive. So that's basically the rule. If there's an even number of negatives, it will be positive. If there's an odd number of negatives, the answer will be negative. So in this example, it says 15 divided by negative 3. Now we can look at that question and say there is 1 negative here, just the negative 3. So therefore, we can just do 15 divided by 3 and make sure that our answer is negative. Okay? So that's an easy way with this is only with multiplication and division, mind you. Okay? With multiplication and division, if it's an even number of negatives, the answer is positive. If there's an odd number, it's negative. So here we're dividing. We know 15 divided by 3 is 5. The main problem is getting what sign. So we just count how many negatives there are. There's just the 1. So therefore, it will be negative because 1 is an odd number. Now, we want to talk a little bit about dividing fractions. Dividing fractions, to divide a fraction, what we will do is multiply by the reciprocal, or flip it over and multiply. You like my little soccer bicycle kick here guy? He's flipping over. Okay, so that's the step that we're doing right here. I have no idea why that's colored blue, by the way. Okay, so 1 over 2 divided by 4 over 3 would be the same as saying 1 over 2 times 3 over 4. See, we flipped over that fraction from 4 over 3 to 3 over 4, and we changed it to multiplication. Okay? And when we multiply, it's 1 times 3 is 3, and 2 times 4 is 8, so our final answer is 3 over 8. Okay? When we are dividing fractions, that's all you do. Don't worry about trying to divide it. Flip it over and multiply it. Okay? So let's combine some ideas. We've got this one here, 24 divided by 3 over 2. And I don't like how that's written, even though I did write it myself. But I'm going to write this as 2 fractions, negative 3 over 2. Okay? There's my 2 fractions, 24 over 1 divided by negative 3 over 2. So what I'm going to do to solve this is that I'm going to multiply by the reciprocal. Okay? So I'm going to leave 24 over 1 the same, and I will multiply by 2 over 3. Now, I'm going to do something here. There's a negative sign on the top, and like we said before, if there's an odd number of negative signs, then it's going to be negative. So negative 3 divided by 2 is the same as 3 divided by negative 2. Okay? It just means that this whole thing is negative. So you're going to see, and this will be the standard way most people write this, is that the negative sign basically stays on the top of fractions. Okay? Just because that's just the way to do it. Okay? So we're not changing. We are flipping it over to change to multiplication, but the negative stays with this fraction. So now we can just multiply. Whoa, didn't mean to do that. Okay, 24 times negative 2, which will give us negative 48. And 3 times 1 is 3. And our fraction of 48 over 3. When we do 48 divided by 3, we get the answer of negative 16. Okay? So again, we have one negative here. 48 divided by 3 is 16. Then the negative just carries with it because there's an odd number of negatives. See, there's one negative, one positive. The full result is negative. All right. Let's look for some variables now. When we have a question like 2a times negative 1 over 4, we are going to do exactly what we did before. We multiply 2a times negative 1, and this unwritten fraction of 2 over 1, we're just going to write it. If you don't write this and you understand that writing a number means that it's over 1, you can write any number as a fraction by just putting it over 1. Okay? So we can write it that way if it helps us to remember. But 2a times negative 1 is equal to negative 2a. And 1 times 4 is 4. And then we will simplify this fraction. Now, we can simplify this fraction because it's multiplication. Okay, 2 times a. So if it's 2 times a divided by 4, that means we can simplify by taking out common factors between both the top and the bottom. Okay? 2 and goes into itself. This is the way I do this. 2 goes into itself 1 time, and 2 goes into 4 2 times. Okay? So it becomes a fraction of negative 1 over 2. Can be written in a couple of different ways. I'll show you. But it becomes a fraction negative 1a over 2. This can also be written because it's 1 times a. You don't have to write it the 1, so it can just be written as negative a over 2. Okay? There's another way to write it as well if we want to, and that's negative 1/2 a. Okay, now you can write it any of these 3 ways and they will be considered right. I just want to point it out to you that it may be written in these 3 ways and it means the same thing. And so if you see it on a test and it's not the way you're used to seeing it, these are the 3 ways that you could write them. Usually you will see your answer in this form. Okay, negative 1/2 a. All right, that's the usual way that you'll see it. You won't usually see this very often. Okay, negative 1a over 2, because usually when you've got a 1, you just, a 1 and the variable, you just get rid of the 1. So you'll see this one here more, this one here the most, and this one here you probably will never see. But it's not wrong. It's just, anyway. Okay, so on to our next question. And that's 2a divided by negative 1 over 4. Now, if we recall from our last slide, when we are dividing by a fraction, we multiply by the reciprocal. So I am going to flip over the second fraction, leaving the negative on the top, and change this sign from division to multiplication. You see that? I flipped over the second fraction and changed it from division to multiplication. And now I can solve 2a times negative 4 is equal to negative 8a, and 1 times 1 is 1, so that is all over 1. Okay? And the standard form for that, if you have a number over 1, is just to write it without the fraction. Okay, so just write it as negative 8a. Okay, so that's the way that we would solve that problem. The final question, the final type of question you may see today is, again, incorporating this idea of substitution. We're given values for each variable, and then we're asked to substitute these values in for each variable. Okay? And I know this is going quick, so if you need to go to office hours and have a quick review on this, that's absolutely fine. Okay. So here's substitution. What I'm going to do is I'm going to substitute in these values p equals 1 in everywhere I see a p. So there's a p there, I'm going to substitute in 1. R is equal to -7, I substitute in -7, and S is equal to -2, I'm going to put in -2. And now I'm going to solve this entire equation. This is multiplication. It's implied even though it's not written because of the parentheses, so that becomes -3. And we can say minus 2 times -7. And 2 times -7 will give us a -14. Okay? The subtraction sign should remain there. Okay? The next part is 6 will remain the same because, again, that's separated by our addition sign. And addition is done at the end. We're going to do multiplication first. So 4 times -2 will give us a -8 down here. Okay. Let's finish up this question by doing some, this is actually using the distributive property where we're distributing this negative into there. But the way that we're looking at it is we have 2 negatives, and that will give us a positive. So -3 plus 14, okay, and 6 minus 8. Okay. So there is what we'll end up with this question. Again, essentially what we've done here is we've looked at this as being negative times -14 and positive times -8. Okay? That's why even though there's a negative sign out here, we don't count all 3, because this parentheses implies multiplication. So we're multiplying negative, and some people like to put a 1 in there. It's like we're multiplying -1 times 14, and that will give us a positive 14. We're multiplying positive 1 times -8, which will give us -8. Okay? And now we just combine all of our terms. -3 plus 14 will give us a positive 11. Whoops, I shrunk my 11. And 6 minus 8 will give us a -2. And as I said earlier, the standard way of writing this is -11/2. Okay. We know that this negative goes with the fraction, so we can put it up top or in front of the entire fraction. So that was our recorded lesson. I hope that it was helpful for you. Again, it was a little bit quick, but there was a lot of material to cover. So you can go through the lesson again and look at the examples in there, work through some samples in the textbook, and if you have questions, make sure to go to your teacher in office hours. Have a wonderful day, and good luck on your quiz.